So good morning, everybody. Welcome to this amazing creative community. And I'm just going to ask if you can, if it's available to you, to tuck your coffee under your chair, your books under your chair, because if you can, I would love for you just to take a moment to stand up. And if you want to remain seated in your chair, that's totally fine too. One of the traditions that we do at Art Starts every morning is to start our day with a 2-minute standing stretch in a circle. We may not be in a circle, but I thought we could still do a bit of a standing stretch. So just take a moment to just find your stance, feel your feet in the floor, kind of just like wiggle into your body, stand up a bit taller, and just take a moment just to find some stillness and just kind of let your body arrive in this room. Maybe you were rushing, maybe you were a bit late, maybe you were really excited and came early. Whatever it is, just allow yourself to arrive in this room right now. And take a long breath in, and then let it all the way out. And keep taking long breaths in and long breaths out, and try to think about the air that's coming into your body. Do you feel it in your nose? Do you feel it in your mouth? As you breathe in, do you feel it in your chest? Do you feel it in your belly? Just notice and try to imagine that air coming in and that air coming out. And now as you breathe in for 3 counts. So breathe in 1, 2, 3, and breathe out 1, 2, 3. And now count to 4. Breathe in 1, 2, 3, 4, and breathe out 1, 2, 3, 4. And now to 5. Breathe in 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and breathe out 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And now kind of wiggle your fingertips along the sides of your body and just like see if you can reach up to the sky, maybe rotate your wrists in one direction, the other direction, and just take a gentle twist over to one side. If you come face to face with a neighbor, maybe give them a little smile, a little hello, good morning. And then you can gently rotate back to center and over to the other side. Good morning. And you can clasp one of your wrists and just see if you can do a side bend. There may be some crashing into each other, that's okay. And clasp your other wrist and over to the other side. And then just let your arms kind of like float back down. See if you can lift up one ankle and just do a little ankle rotation. See what your balance is feeling like this morning. If that's not available to you, not to worry. And then other leg, little ankle rotation. And then we're just going to do like a wake up of our face, so you can kind of get your fingers massaging into your cheeks. I have nice big cheeks, so this always feels really good. Open your eyes real wide, and then blink intentionally 3 times. Wiggle your eyebrows up and down. Make little hoo-hoo eyes at each other. Wiggle your nose like a little rabbit. See how that feels? If you can make a fishy face, do a little bit of that. There you go. And just kind of wiggle your whole body and just like let that really release and then just find that stillness again. And just sort of see how you feel. I can invite you to sit down again. So getting into our bodies and acknowledging that we have a body and we're not just heads walking around in a room, and just thinking about like the connection of the 2 sides of our brain, maybe having a moment of like just forgetting all the busyness and all the rush and just focusing on your breath and your body and the moment here right now. It's a really important way to start. And I think one of the things about traditions is like how we start things and how we end things hold a lot of meaning. And so I appreciate that we could start together in a sense of connection to really think about this moment and this time together right now. So as a kind of a convening about the concept of creativity, I think it's kind of natural to say, well, what is creativity? There are definitely lots of ideas and thoughts around this word. It's hard to kind of pinpoint it down to some very particular things, but one of the things that I could share that I think that it's not is that creativity is not something that's only equated with artistic. And absolutely, artistic people are often uber creative, and we sometimes keep that as our ideal of what creativity needs to look like, which sometimes feels unattainable and inaccessible to us. And artistic, in fact, does not have a monopoly over the word creative. And the manifesto itself, starts to say we are all creative beings. And that's something that's really important in our lives, is to acknowledge that innate creativity within us. One of the definitions that I quite like about creativity is that it is applied imagination, because we all have ideas, we all have kind of thoughts, and the connection to make it into creativity is the action, the doing something about it, the idea that you might have in your head and making that actually into something. So like, a spud box. We have several of these lying around in our house, and kind of the purpose of a spud box is to like transport food back and forth between their warehouse and your house. But like on a hot day, who's to say that a spud box can't be like a swimming pool? That's applied imagination. The other thing about creativity sometimes that's useful is to think about kind of big C creativity. Maybe it's that unattainable thing that you have in your mind that's just like not you. I can't draw, I'm not that creative, I'm not an artist, all of those things. But maybe think about it as like, well, what about little C creativity? Could that be something that I identify with? The everyday creativity, the one that's maybe not so intimidating, the one that is innate, that one that you can recognize. There are so many kind of moments that you might even overlook those innate creativity, everyday creativity moments. So this is, a little example of how, my husband and I, we live in this concrete loft in Gastown. It's 800 square feet. There's no rooms, no doors. It's just like one big open space. It was great. And then I got pregnant, and we were going to have a baby, and we're like, where's the baby going to go? And like, where's the door that we're going to close when like the baby's asleep so we could have a normal life? And for sure, this is like a first world problem to say like, I don't have the right room for my baby in my beautiful concrete loft in Gastown. But within that kind of first world problem, like rather than us thinking, okay, we have to move to the suburbs, or we have to like find a bigger place or get into more debt to do that, we really just thought about like, how can we make the space that we have work better for us? And so we created like a tiny little room under the stairs, and then it was about like creating a space that was going to reflect the new phase of our life. And I really wanted to explore playfulness and fun and color and just a sense of like of creativity. And I think I am a firm believer that physical space really does impact like how you feel and how you show up. And so just a simple thing like a chromatic progression of color up the stairs was an opportunity for a bit of little C creativity. And now, what is tradition? Mark shared a little kind of opening narrative about it's like the thing that kind of connects us, and it's sacred, and there are rituals involved, and they mean something. And tradition is something that sometimes says, like, this is who we are, and this is how we do things. And similarly to big C, little c, I thought, well, what about big T, little t? Because sometimes those traditions that we feel are outside of us and we just kind of like follow because they're the narrative of kind of the mainstream, perhaps within our own little kind of communities and our own circles, we can identify little t traditions, everyday traditions. In my family, growing up, like photographs were a really big part of like documenting the progression of time. And so this top photo of my sister and I was from when I was 6 years old in Kenya, like with my sister in between palm trees, this really like memorable childhood photo that was always on our walls. 25 years later, we were in Mexico, saw a palm tree, and we're like, hey, like, why don't we take this moment to recreate that picture that has been so meaningful to us? And then kind of the opportunity now is like, well, in 25 more years, we could do it again. And if we're still alive in 25 more years, we can do it a fourth time. And so the kind of idea of documentation and photography has been something that I've really held quite sacred as a tradition of my own. And so we all, have seen all the Pinterest boards of all the cute things you can do with little babies. There's no shortage of that. Ours was like, let's just put our baby on the same chair every week. So for 52 weeks, we can kind of just like track that progression of time. I don't know what we're going to do with all these 52 photos, but like just the idea of capturing it was this kind of calling in my tradition to just feel that it was a way that I could honor the passing of time, especially in the first year, which is you only turn one once, and like to just be one, it's a very special idea, I think. Another kind of example of everyday traditions could just be like, for us, rain or shine, we try to go out for a dog walk on Sunday. If it's an opportunity to get outdoors and like not be too kind of scared by the Vancouver rain, let's do it. Let's just say it's a tradition, because if we say it's a tradition, then we can't help but make it happen. We don't give ourselves a choice. Another like tradition that Kang and I really celebrate is something that he brought into my life is pho. It's soup. It's like, what's so traditional about that? But the idea is that like literally every time we go anywhere, the minute we leave, Kang goes into like pho withdrawal. Hi, Kang. And so it's kind of now become a tradition to say, like, let's make that into something. Let's say, like, okay, wherever we go, let's find the best pho place, whether it's in, like, Beverly Hills 9021 Pho, or or in San Francisco, or in Aix-en-Provence in the south of France, or in Vienna, where they put, like, fettuccine noodles into the pho, which was totally weird. And then in Barcelona that one time when the pho restaurant was closed, and we had a little cry about that. So creativity and tradition, there's a lot of meaning in both of these terms, and the thing I wanted to explore today was like the tension between the two. So if tradition is like, this is who we are, and this is how we do things, and then creativity is like the disruptor to say like, I'm going to ask questions about this, and I'm going to say why, or what else, or what if. Creativity is a thing that allows us to challenge this. And the other thing about creativity I want to share before I launch into some more stories is that creativity is a process. And if you're going to take away like one thing today about what creativity is and isn't, I really hope that this is it, is this idea that it's not about the thing you make or the thing you do, it's about the process that you take to get there, because that's where creativity really shows up. And it's not just that aha moment or that strike of genius or that awesome idea. It's about the research and the preparation and the incubation of actually doing nothing and just letting those ideas percolate. And yes, that aha moment is part of it, but it's also the verification of like, how did that go? And did that really like meet the ideas, or did it land the way I wanted it to? So from preparation, information gathering, to incubation, a little bit of percolation, to aha, illumination moment, to then verification of like a bit of reflection to see like, how is that going to inform kind of next phases or next processes? So I wanted to explore this tension about creativity and tradition through a story about getting married. So once we decided to get engaged, which is a story of its own, but I won't go to that story quite yet. Once we decided to get engaged, we really started to notice other people's weddings that we went to, because that was kind of the preparation phase of like, okay, let's observe how other people do this tradition. Let's see how we feel about this. How do we feel as guests? What do we notice about the couple getting married? Do they look like they're enjoying themselves, or are they super stressed? Like, what is the formula that they have explored that works or doesn't work? And so we got invited to this amazing wedding experience in the south of France with our friends Mark and Edith, and the invitation basically said, we've rented a villa in the south of France, there's only 16 people coming, like, it's going to be a week of awesomeness, are you in or not? And we're like, absolutely, we are there. So off we went to France, and sure enough, their wedding was this like epic, floating over lavender fields at sunrise in the south of France in a hot air balloon, all 16 of us like seeing them like have their union amidst like big loud fire like sounds as the hot air balloon had to like, regenerate itself. But it was, of all the like bars to set, this one was extremely high. But really, this was the active preparation phase for me. It was like, okay, that was amazing. Why was it amazing? How could we kind of create something that could be interesting for us? And then kind of like time passed, and like all the ideas and the thoughts that I was having, just kind of were in the back burner. They just hung out there for a bit. And the piece that I was trying to figure out was like, my husband Kang is really into adventure, and I really wanted something meaningful and like memorable and intimate, and I was trying to figure out like, how are we gonna find the intersection of those two things? And so the illumination moment was like, great idea, we're gonna get married at Everest Base Camp. It's like epic and adventurous, it's gonna be intimate, because like we're gonna go on this journey together. And I thought it was the best idea ever, shared it with Kang, and he was like, yeah, that sounds great, let's do it. We like quickly looked up on REI for a trip, and sure enough, there was an Everest Base Camp trip. We booked it, done. Like, illumination moment was there. There were several months before the trip then was supposed to happen, so then it was kind of like back to incubation phase, kind of unconsciously, of just like letting this idea of this is how we're gonna get married, just the two of us at Everest Base Camp. And so what was happening for me was like, wait a minute, you know, in my tradition, there are so many layers of like how a wedding is celebrated. And my mom, you know, had her Mendi ceremony. My sister had her Mendi ceremony. And I was like, well, what about mine? You know, like, where am I in this equation? And if I think about the purpose of a wedding for me, it was like actually being in the presence of those that matter to us most to like help mark this transition from this part of our relationship to this next part of our relationship. So that really felt missing in the Everest Base Camp idea. And so if you were at Ian Cromwell's Creative Mornings last month, the theme was restart. So I said, hey, nope, Everest Base Camp is not the right idea. Let's go back to the preparation stage to say, if the purpose for me is about having friends and family together to like mark this union, then the decision needs to support that. So we kind of went back to preparation phase, which then was like, oh crap, now we have like a wedding to plan and like all these decisions to make and who to invite and all of that stuff. And the illumination moment started happening when the connection of like the purpose of like intimacy and connection started to come through. So I really kind of resonated with the symbol of a circle, and sure enough, our venue could kind of like make that happen. I really wanted it to be playful and fun, so as part of our like lunch reception, which we made as a lunch reception because I don't like to dance, and I didn't want the like first dance and dance party all through the night. Like I was like, I don't want to go there because I'm going to be like the awkward person on the side, and it's my wedding, and that would be really weird. So for our lunch reception, we made placemats, and it's not because it was for the kids' table. This was for everybody's table, and you know, spot the difference. You can kind of notice a couple things, but these were just like playful attempts to say, just because we're adults convening in this like traditional formula of a wedding doesn't mean we can't just do silly, goofy things. And that was sort of like an expression of who I felt Kang and I together were. I've always been a very like serious person that brings a lot of like care and attention to everything that I do, and Kang is like light and playful, and kind of the union of that was something that I really wanted to share. And so then the verification was like the picture that I got to add to my mom and my sister off that like really traditional auspicious moment. And the verification happened when like we put on red traditional outfits and like rice was thrown. And when my dad gave a speech, like I cried. You know, it was those moments of like, yes, this was the moment that I was wanting to mark that union of something really important. And so I share this story to illustrate that creativity is a process, and that it doesn't always go from like A to B to C to D and then over and over again. Sometimes you start with preparation, you incubate, you're like, nope, back to the drawing board. Maybe the aha moment comes, but maybe it's the wrong aha moment, and you give yourself permission to like kind of go back and forth until you find that sweet spot. Another thing about traditions is birthdays. You know, up until again, I met Kang. Birthdays were like, you make a cake, you sing a song, you blow the candles, you open the presents, it's a good time. Like, that's a pretty awesome formula. I'm not sure what's not to like about that. But birthdays in that kind of formula weren't really Kang's thing. He was more about like friends and activity. And so when it was his birthday, I was really trying to think about like, how do you design an experience that's about the person and not about just the tradition and not just the formula and not going on autopilot to assume like, okay, we got to like find a beautiful cake and book a venue and blah, blah, blah. So I had noticed that the YMCA, which was the gym we went to, like always promoted birthday parties. They assumed that that meant for children. But I said, like, who's to say that that's not for us too? So I called the manager and I said, hey, like, I'm just curious about your birthday parties. And they're like, okay, how old is your young one? And I'm like, he's actually 32. And it was such a good, she like chuckled at that as well. And I said, like, hey, is there any opportunity? Hey, low battery mouth, the low battery situation is coming on. Okay. They just said, you know, this is great. We would love to support it. Here are 10 guest passes. Knock yourself out. There's lots of fun things to do in the Y. Go play squash, take a yoga class. There's the hot tub. Like, the space is yours. Do with what you wish. And it was such a nice kind of invitation. And so I, you know, invited our friends and made loot bags and just had the opportunity to, like, yeah, make it playful and fun, and to just remember that we don't have to be like kids to have fun. So these are just symbols of like reminders that you have opportunities to like challenge the formula and make it something personal and about you that's going to really work. Some traditions we have started that just don't stick, and there's good reason for that. You might be wondering like what dogs and target practice have in common. This was something, I'm not sure why we thought it was a good idea, but it was put the dogs away, put them in a safe place like the bathroom, close the door, and then we would put a target on our door inside, grab the BB gun, and like do target practice inside our loft with our friends. Like, we thought that was a very good idea. That tradition did not stick. Chris is taking a photo because that's his partner Kay doing awesome ninja pose. Yeah. Another tradition that didn't stick, and I wish that it did, was this awesome kind of convening that we had as a group of friends called Project Make Something. Acronym PMS, it was the thing that happened once a month. So what it was that we came together and we just like came up with a project. It didn't matter what it was just like an idea to get together. And the premise of this one was that we needed to do like a PSA campaign to promote eating vegetables, because the problem in the world is that people don't eat enough vegetables, and the current kind of communication strategies, they're not working. Like, vegetables are good for you and they keep you healthy. We're like, nope, we're going to say vegetables are evil. Vegetables need to be eaten and basically killed because they're taking over the world. And so we did this like very like, what's the word, like not official, I don't know what the word is, but like not professional, amateur. This very amateur stop motion animation video to show that like vegetables are evil, they are going to take over the world, so therefore we must eat them. And it was so much fun. And the funny thing is that we never finished the video. We don't even know where the finished video is. So again, it was really about process. It was about friends getting together to say, like, let's make something, let's do something with our time together, just be playful, just be fun. And that's what that was. So I've talked a lot about like very specific personal examples of like creativity and tradition, and the reason that I wanted to start there is that creativity is something very personal, and when you show up at work and you kind of have to like navigate that like professional kind of persona, you can't ignore all of the like stories and memories and decisions that you've made personally. And so when I started at Art Starts, and like Mark said in my intro, this was a new role for me. I had never been in a leadership position before. I hadn't, hired or fired, managed a budget, written a grant, all of those things, which are kind of crucial to the role. So all I had to really depend on was kind of what I believed to be true, and like be the kind of boss that I always wish I had, create the kind of team that I always wish I could have been a part of, and just create the environment that I thought would allow people to thrive. And the really important kind of sentiment and kind of guiding principle was that organizations don't succeed, people do. And when we talk about people, it's about personal. So all the kind of years of information gathering that I had done, I'm like an avid note taker. I would say that's like a big part of my creative process, is like writing all the things down. And it's interesting because it turns out that when you have to distill ideas into writing, it allows your brain to actually make more sense of that learning. And it's not about taking notes on a computer or iPad or iPhone. It's like pen, paper, writing it down. So that had been part of my practice for a really long time. Like I even have a little pen and notebook in my wallet. And this kind of translated to Art Starts in kind of really celebrating the value of writing things down. And so we have this tradition that we call kudos, where throughout the week, if we notice that someone has done something really kind of exceptional, remarkable, appreciative, like anything that we just think is worth mentioning, we write it down on a little piece of paper and we add it to a jar. And Wednesday morning, we start our day after our 2-minute stretch, reading these aloud to each other. And the opportunity to kind of be validated in a group setting out loud and feel like seen and heard and valued and appreciated is something so powerful. And like this idea of traditions that kind of Mark in his preamble said, is like it gives us this sense of belonging. And in an organization where it's not the organization that succeeds, it's the people, you want people to feel safe enough to take creative risks. You want people to feel safe enough and motivated enough to like want to go and do that extra thing or that, the above and beyond, because otherwise there's really no reason to want to put yourself out there in that way. And so kudos as a ritual has really been this opportunity to appreciate all of those efforts and to say that those mean something, and please continue to do these awesome things because we see you and we appreciate you. We also have a great tradition around writing cards. Like we don't buy cards generally, we often try to make them, or if we do buy them, there's like a real intention about the one we bought. We celebrate anniversaries and not just birthdays, so it's like, you've been at Art Starts for 2 years. Like, we really appreciate all these things that you've contributed, and really making sure that, again, the written practice of expressing thoughts and ideas is something that we make as part of our organizational culture. And then when Art Starts turned 17 years old, we thought it would be a nice opportunity to, we thought it would be a nice opportunity to write kind of our messages to Art Starts to say, what is it about the organization that we really value? Because while the organization is not a person, we also wanted to articulate our appreciation for the space and the container that Art Starts has offered to us. And so a lot of our convenings revolve around food. I know that's a lot of traditions for people, but also the concept of a circle. And when we gather in a circle, it's really nice to have something at the center of that circle. Sometimes it feels a bit vulnerable not to have a chair and PowerPoints in between us. And so having something to allow your eyes to gaze at and rest on is really useful when convening people together. And ultimately, it's about trying to make that human connection, because tradition really tries to celebrate who we are as people, and sometimes in workplaces we often forget that, and we jump into our agendas and do the business at hand, but forget that that face-to-face, human-to-human interaction, which this convening does so well, is so important. And just kind of a couple ending things about the importance of play in work and in life. We host a lot of events, and we always make sure that even if they are adult-oriented, we engage our audience in a sense of play. When we do food platters, we try not to go to Costco and buy kind of the generic stuff, because we feel that if people, it's even unconscious, if they just notice that someone has put very thoughtful care and attention to this thing, it allows them to show up differently. It allows them to have a different sense of meaning to that moment. And so really putting real thought into the things that you do can make ordinary moments really meaningful. So I just kind of close on kind of the tradition that we're in right now, which is Christmas. Maybe we call it the holidays just to be more inclusive, but let's not kid ourselves. It's Christmas. It's everywhere. And it's actually a tradition that feels very exclusive for many of us, including myself. I am an Ismaili Muslim. This is not part of my tradition. I didn't grow up celebrating Christmas. And it's challenging to know how do I navigate this kind of very traditional time of year. And having a child who, like, they're surrounded by it. Like, everywhere you go, it's Christmas, Christmas, Christmas. And I kind of want to know, in this spirit of creativity and asking questions, like, do I have a choice here? Like, is it possible for me to tell her at the beginning, like, Santa does not exist? Can I do that? And if I do that, what happens to our kind of like cultural traditions? And, you know, the best thing about this time of year is that we have time off, and I really appreciate that, because that allows us to get together with the people that we care about, and those meals together really do celebrate process over product. Because ultimately, like Moda said, like, we have big problems in the world. Climate change is a very big problem. Like, do we need more things? Do we need to, like, consume more stuff? Do we need stocking stuffers of, like, crap that we're gonna throw away anyways? You know, like, is that the tradition that we wanna celebrate and be known for and attach meaning to? The United Way kind of put out this study to say, you know, 48% of people say there's nothing that they want, and 61% say they don't even need anything, and 76% of people say, like, they would rather give something to somebody else in need. And so the question that I've been asking myself at this time of year is, like, well, what can I do to respond to the big issues of our time? And when art is there to remind us that we can think for ourselves in this tradition, where can we go from here? So I just kind of end on the Creative Mornings manifesto, because if you are gonna, like, stay true to any tradition, I think this one is a really good one. That, yeah, everyone is creative, that we come together for these moments to, like, remind ourselves that we can think for ourselves and create the kind of traditions that we believe to be true for the purpose that we want them to be. And that's the most beautiful tradition of all. Thank you.
Who has a question for Navida?
Thank you. Simple question. How did you handle Santa Claus with your kids?
That's like the stage that I'm trying to figure out right now. I haven't handled it yet. I've just been trying to search. I'm in, like, preparation mode of, like, what are the possible, like, ways to do this? I don't know. If you have any suggestions, please tell me. Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, I can imagine that would be stressful when you think of it from the perspective, like, then she'll be with her little friends.
Yeah.
You have a daughter, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. And then she'll be like, what are you talking about? Santa's
I know.
not real.
And I kind of want that.
She's the bad, like, what are you talking
right.
about?
And I'm kind of excited about that potential, but then I'm like, I don't know if that's fair to her.
We had that problem because I didn't do Santa Claus, nor my husband. So our son, we just said, it's our secret, but there's no Santa Claus.
Oh, I like
but
that.
Don't tell your other little friends that, because
that's nice.
So he kept it as a secret, kind of between us. But,
that's amazing.
But we knew, because otherwise we'd be in big trouble with all the other parents.
Any other questions? Oh.
Great presentation, thank you. What do you do when you get stuck and don't feel creative? Do you have kind of rituals that get you into a creative mind frame?
Yeah, I'm definitely the everyday creativity type person. Like, preparing for this talk, I would say I got a little bit stuck because A, I had bronchitis last week and was, like, literally stuck in bed. And B, sometimes you kind of get intimidated to be like, oh, what do I have of value to, like, share to this, like, room of amazing people? And I think it's just, like, for me, it's having, like, my radar always, like, up and just, like, noticing, like, where the potential places of, like, inspiration or that little nudge or nugget that can get you, like, a little step further towards the place that you want to land. Yeah, it's the tiniest little things. It's just about the openness. That's sort of my solution.
I had a thought as you were sharing that process diagram, the incubation thing, which I totally get, and as a designer myself, I often tell clients and colleagues, like, we need to give it the time it deserves. Like, we have to respect the process and give it the time. But the funny side effect of that is if you give a project too much time, you can get really stuck.
Absolutely, yeah. There's definitely
deadlines
a sweet
and,
spot.
Like, can really, right?
Yeah.
Like, sometimes really having to work under pressure actually gets you unstuck. I think I saw another hand happen somewhere. Where was that? Oh.
Thank you. Great talk. So you talked at the beginning about how all those points of your job that you didn't know anything about and that you obviously had to figure out. What was that process and what kind of timeline was that?
Yeah. Good question. I think the best part was that I was given trust that I could do it. And that kind of like underpinning that somebody trusts you and then gives you all the space was what allowed me to figure it out. Like I knew I was a competent person, like I can figure it out, I just needed the space. And so for sure there was like mistakes made and things that happened, but I think that there was always like this connection to the people that I was working with to see like how is this like resonating. And I think the biggest kind of change in organizational culture was that the leader was no longer the expert that had all the answers, but the leader was the one to create space for others to show up and help. And I think that was what allowed me to like figure out what I needed to figure out, but not be the only person.
And one last thing, I didn't do Christmas growing up either, so I helped my friends who did find all their gifts and open and see what they got.
Nice, nice.
Hi, awesome talk. It was lots of fun to listen to. A question for you in your work environment. Someone had asked how you deal with creative blocks. How, kind of on the flip side of that, do you help, say, colleagues and people that you're working with get through their own creative blocks? How might you kind of nurture other people's creativity at work, or even just kind of in your own circle of friends?
Yeah, I think it kind of happened yesterday. We were talking about like how we celebrate birthdays at Art Starts. And we were just like having a conversation, and I really just kept asking like, well, why do you think that? And why about that? And just the layers, it's really asking the question. And like the amazing Linda, who's in the audience here, is one of my great inspirations. She's also my coach. And every time we have a session, it just like baffles me how little she has to actually do to like get me to the place that I already know I want to get there. And so it's the space and the questions, thank you, Linda, that I have learned so much from, and I think that's how I help and try to create like space for others, is because you know internally what you want to do.
Okay, stellar, thank you.
You probably skipped it out of humility, knowing you, but can you give us a quick elevator pitch version of what Art Starts does? Like how does Art Starts, what's the...
Sure, yeah, thank you for asking that, because I didn't talk about that at all. So Art Starts, we are about saying creativity is essential. Kids need to like nurture their innate creativity. We are born creative, but then it gets squashed out of us. We get labeled, we are told like, you are artistic, you are not, you are this, you are that. And so Art Starts is about saying, art is an amazing way to learn, not to like learn drawing and painting and dance skills, but like the lens through which you try to connect with your learning. So we're a charity that's saying art needs to be part of the education system. We get professional artists to work in schools, to do performances, to do artist residencies, to train teachers to think about their creative practice in more confident ways, to get artists to think about like how does their art practice translate into the lens of education. And we like work with all the public and private schools across British Columbia with that mission to say like, make art at the center of learning, not this subject off to the side that gets cut.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
I really wish our education system and the funding behind it and the government that drives that prioritize that and didn't have to be a charity.
Yeah.
Maybe one or two.
Why do you dislike Halloween?
Yes!
I think it's
Navida.
It's the introvert in me. Like I just don't like big convenings. I get self-conscious real fast. Like even Mark asked me for trivia. I'm like, I don't know. I don't have anything interesting. I don't know.
So you told me about farting.
Go big or go home, right? I don't know. There's something about it. Like I don't like parties. I don't like loud things. I don't like drinking. And those are kind of all the adult versions of Halloween that I know, and I don't like it. Yeah.
Good answer. Last question. I'm going to give it, we had a lot of women, so there's one guy brave enough to put his hand up.
What are you planning for the next birthday party?
Oh, yes. Well, actually, that's a great question because we turn 40, both of us, Kang and I, next year, and that's what we've been trying to figure out. We're like in preparation, incubation stage. So the ideas on the table are like rent a camper van and do like Greenland for a month, I don't know how realistic that is, but that's one of the ideas. Do something on our own. Like I have a best friend who is living in France right now, and I'm like, really, the idea of a good time for me right now with a toddler is like alone time, where I don't have to like worry about other people's needs. So I might just go do the thing that I want to do for myself, and he might go do the thing he wants to do for himself. But yeah, we're kind of like gathering those thoughts right now and haven't got that aha moment yet, but he turns 40 in January and I turn 40 in October, so it's coming up.
Thank you.
Happy birthday in advance.
Thank you.
Well, folks, that is the end of our time with Navida. Thank you very, very much.
Thank you, everybody.